Hello, my friends. Hope you all are well. It's been a while since I put out a YouTube video, but I was inspired today. I was not wasting too much time on social media, and I caught my friend Mikey's live video, and he reminded me of that beautiful saying, do one thing every day that scares you. And so he challenged everyone who watched his video to do something that scared them. So instead of doing that, I decided to make a video for you guys. No, actually, it does bring up a little bit of fear sometimes putting myself out there, but it's really neat to see more and more of my people in my network and my community stepping up and putting out greatness and encouraging and inviting people to step into their own greatness. So I'm glad you're here with me. I was inspired during my own practice when I was really working on the refinements of something called ecstasy arms. What sounds better than that, right? To find something that brings you ecstasy, to find a positioning of the way you hold your arms, the wings of your body, the most sensitive, tactile places that really truly are not connected to your head, right? But connected to your heart, right? The arms are that really deep, full connection of what the center of your will and your well and your own radiance can really offer to the world. So it's worth it to spend some time with the wings. And ecstasy arms can really lead into some amazing sensitivity to the balance of the right and the left halves of the body, right? When you have a really good touch and you're not tense and tight and crowded in your shoulder girdle, you can actually bow your front body really open, holding the natural curvature of our double S curves in our spine. You can really create a strong and suspended bow shape where the back body uniformly engages. And you can start to fill into your back ribs, broaden your scapula, the roots of your wings, root and anchor down through your hips and lumbar to let the low back release. And with that, you start to create a more uniform engagement from each side of the spine, top to bottom. So ecstasy arms can really be an incredible tool, especially as you're moving deeper into your back bowspring practice, to go deeper into then a really healthy and uniformly toned side bend, right? With ecstasy arms, there is a gauge for us to be honest, right? With inherent in the bowspring alignment system, inherent is good integrity, right? You feel the minute you go out of alignment when you start to overwork one part of your body, when there's one area martyring itself, right? More than anything else in your body. That's in bowspring a sign that you're pushing just a little bit past a healthy boundary. And so you want to back up, reorganize the inner body, and then go deeper. And then ecstasy arms really stabilizing the periphery of the body by bringing that contact of dome hands to the back of the skull. The sensitivity you build is incredible, but you can really get some good feedback on where you're overworking and how you are gripping and tightening. So it's a real simple practice on the floor to give you a sense of how to move forward and up off the floor, practicing ecstasy arms and then ultimately going into deeper experiences of it. But with the bowspring practice, it's really easy to want to jump in, and let's be real, with almost anything, it's super tempting to want to jump into the most complex variation of a shape or a pose or a practice or a discipline or an exercise. You want to jump right in and go to the hard stuff. But boy, are we going to serve ourselves a lot better if we start it slowly, if we engage it in a really balanced and supported way where we're not fighting the effect of gravity as much, and where we're not as likely to go and fall back into our patternings as much, right? And when we start to get goal-oriented and push really hard, that's where we start to go into pattern. The more stress we're under, the more reactive we're going to be on the pathways that are already really established, the less likely, like when we're in a really stressful pressure situation, high pressure situation, we don't have a lot of critical thinking, extra, space in our minds to really go, let me try a different way this time. So it's the same thing with a complex shape that you try to move into in bowspring or yoga, anything really. You want to be able to do the fundamentals at the most basic level and then bring that integrity with you throughout every stage. And that's why it's so fortunate to have the gauge, what I call the inherent feedback loop of bowspring, so you know when you've gone too far. Always building sensitivity to when one part is overworking or martyring itself or talking a little bit louder than the rest of the whole. It's a really global experience. So the way that we practice it is I'm going to invite you to go onto your back. And in fact, before we do, I'll give you a little heads up to what we're doing. You're going to bring your arms from a low V vector. You can call this 0, right? Where it's sort of at this neutral place, still in the front plane of the body. The arms are internally rotated so that seed hands, the soft fist, where the knuckles are kind of staircased, the palms face backwards, right? And the eyes of the elbows can still face in together, but you're really letting the lower arm rotate internally. And as you do that, you're able to get more fullness and more broadening through your back wings, through the back of your heart. And that's really a strong and important piece of Radiant Heart. When you go into Ecstasy arms, you'll be able to feel along both sides of the spine there, especially in the ribs, as you have most expansive width and space from center out. So we're going to go from a low V to 10, all the way up, turn up the notch, where we stretch the belly with and directly proportional to the lift of our arms. A lot of times we can go from a collapsed spine and lift our arms all day. We do this standing up just as much as we do this sitting. That's why practicing lifting the arms overhead is a really worthwhile practice. I always like to tell students, look, I'm teaching to your 90-year-old spine, and I want you to be able to put your own shirt on as you get older, right? This is that simple act, and it's really not that simple when you think about the shoulder girdle. But going from 0 to 10, keeping integrity, keeping sensitivity to both sides of your trapezius muscles to where the neck can start to harden, and then going from there to chin-up bar, and then practicing the movement to Ecstasy arms. And you'd be really surprised the complexity that can arise through those few transitions in the arms, and how so important it is that through every step of the way, Radiant Heart, expand on all sides, push out from the inside, and there's no ceiling to how much you can push. There's no limit to how big your heart can expand uniformly, right? There is a limit to your body being able to move in one direction and only one direction. You get to a point where you're actually putting yourself at risk. But when you grow globally, when you radiate uniformly on all sides, it's amazing the growth that you can continue to experience in your own life. And that's so much far beyond a handstand or a back bend, right? You really start to embody that in your life when you're able to find that push from the inside. So every step of the way as we move our arms, always finding and checking back in with Radiant Heart. So we start on our backs. So you come down mindfully rather than just dropping, right? Ear to shoulder. And it's nice to practice without this hand on the floor. Although if you're new, it's good to use the hand flat against the floor and slide down. But if you've done this a couple of times, use your hand against the top knee to give you a little bit of a boundary, and see if you can get the head out of the picture. Fill up the ribs, especially on the opposite, the opposing side, and then let your seed hand take you down nice and slow. Don't drop. Keep full and push the lifted knee into the extended arm. As you lower down, you still have space under the side ribs. Channel open all the way, and then the head leads the way as you roll onto your back. Nice and easy, no pressure on the spine, no overwork in any one vertebra or part of the body. Take a moment with your feet on the earth to push your femurs into socket. I like to lift my hips slightly, just real little bit, and with a strong connection through my feet, anchor the pubic bone and let the belly stretch. And just kind of move the hips side to side. Then take the back side and lift those glutes up and in to support the sacrum. You should feel a nice forward tilt of the pelvis with no compression in the ribs. And in order to really confirm that, stretch your seeds to the sky, lean one way, and broaden the opposite wing. Just real little inchworm effect. All right. So just bring your hands into a globe where all 10 fingertips touch together. And I want you to notice the difference. Bring your elbows to the sides and drop your hands to your chest. And feel what happens to the inner rib cage, that diminishment. Now with a big breath, push wide. Let the arms float so they're forward of the ribs. The elbows push out to the sides with the widening of the ribs. The hands take that soft curl at every knuckle, globing the palms together. And then you relate the expansion of the space between the palms to the expansion of the space inside the heart. Open the throat. Feel your belly stretch as you inchworm wiggle, serpentine your spine out of that really grounded pelvic bowl. All right, now extending the arms. Don't drop the elbows really. Keep them inflated just in front of the side ribs. But extend your fingertips towards the feet and then hinge your wrist so your fingernails point to the floor. And as you do, notice if your belly just got shorter. Lift the chest and slide the ribs away from the hips, keeping your throat open. Watch the throat as you let the pubic bone anchor and the ribs rise. You want to keep that area in the neck. This is going to be crucial for when we lift the arms overhead in 10. We want to make sure we're finding the neck nice and long here. As the arms get fatigued, that is a sign that your ribs have gotten smaller. So with a heavy tip in the fingers, right, like they're dripping to the floor, keep a soft curl of every knuckle. Squeeze the base of your palm gently so that there's a sleeve effect all the way up from fingernails to the back of your ribs. And the way I like to think about it before I come into seed hands is I like to think about like I'm playing the strings of my arms, right? Like the connective tissues are like violin strings. And as I move the pinky ring, middle index and index finger into the palm and hinge at my wrists. So there's two hinges. I hinge in and out, so forward and out, and tone the underside and the tricep side of my arm. And as you kind of play with that little resistance in your palm, almost like you have a rubber band around all of your fingers, and you sort of tickle the ivories, if you will, with each finger, you can kind of feel a little more deepening, a depth increase in your underarms, right? So you want to make the armpits as hollow as you possibly can. And I know you think about that every single day when you wake up in the morning, but man, think about it if you did. Hollow the underarms, your wingspan gets crazy wide and full. Now fold the pinky finger in all the way. Feel the tone up the pinky side of the arm, and then fold the ring finger in a little less, and then middle index. So your fingers are like a staircase, and there's still an openness in the palms of your hands. Now it's really worth it to open and then create the seed hand again, right? If you feel that sleeve of tone from fingernails all the way up, you can even feel, take your hand and palpate along the arm. What you're doing in the hands is going to translate and travel all the way into those side ribs again. That's why as you open and create seed hands a couple of times, you can see I'm making really small adjustments, moving my back heart, the low ribs away from my pelvis. And as I keep my arms low, I'm able to really feel a connection to the back low ribs. So just in that moment, I started to feel a little bit of overwork in my middle ribs. So as I lowered my arms down, I'm going to breathe nice and wide, let the diaphragm drop down and out in all directions, and feel that expansion into the low ribs. And then I'm going to keep my feet anchored with the dig drag, fill up with radiant heart, push from the inside, and let the arms begin to rise up to more like a 5, right? Straight from the shoulder to the ceiling, and the palms face each other. And just pause there and feel the widening as much as you can of the underarms, the shoulder blades, the back of your heart, and the collarbones, the front of your chest and sternum. And as you feel that widening, energetically push the palms towards each other so the back of the ribs stay nice and full. And then with your pubic bone anchored, the tops of your shoulders, your trapezius, and your neck relaxed, flip and rotate your thumbs external. But try not to be really aware of the hollows in your elbows so that as you rotate, you're not hyperextending the lower arm. You rotate the upper arm external. Now feel that nice opening across the upper back. Check in with the low ribs. Do a little dig drag action, pulling down the pubic bone to the earth to let the belly get longer and the central channel pulling more taut between the floor of the hips and the upper palate in the mouth. Now you'll see as I rotated, I started to bend my elbows a little bit into that chin up bar shape. I'm still wiggling out my neck, really being aware that my lowest back ribs, when they lose fullness, displaces the effort into my upper shoulders and traps. So I want to really be aware that I'm moving moment to moment and seeing really where I can stay even in my sensation, wide across the side ribs, equally left to right. Now in my hands position, my seeds have opened a little bit. If you've ever seen harvest hands, the the thumb, index, and middle finger, our peace fingers, are curled a little bit out like we're pulling a piece of fruit from a tree. That's why we call it harvest hands. So anyways, you hug the elbows in with a little bend. You hook those peace fingers as if there's a bar overhead. I call it a little space bar, right? And as you pull against space, you can let the ribs rise again and feel that the lift is happening uniformly on all sides. And I can feel my right side picking up the slack a little more. So I'm going to push into my left side ribs. And my goal is to reach, keeping the elbows narrow, all 10 of my fingers to the floor together at the same time. And what I noticed was my right hand touched a little faster than my left. And I'm just really building sensitivity to where I can feel where I am in space, so that when all of my 10 fingers touch, it's at the same time. I can kind of feel that balance. And can come out of it, really. I'm getting fatigued, so I almost wanted to drop out of it. But I always say in classes, if you get fatigued, don't come out of it, just do something different, right? Change it a little bit. So what I'm going to do is actually extend my elbows a tiny bit straighter, but still really strong, working on hugging my elbows in and broadening out through my collarbones. Another way to practice that is to walk the dome hands even wider as you narrow the elbows. When you press the upper palate into the floor, lengthening, push through the crown of your head and the dome of your mouth, you can really feel the heat building, the warmth start to cultivate into the upper body and the wings, but you're again able to feel that sensation uniformly. My arms are even quivering a little bit. I'm going to extend back to 10 to come out of this, still drawing my triceps in together. My legs are on. I'm dragging, anchoring through the pubis, and I'm going to keep all of this length in my belly, even as I take my arms back up to 5, palms facing in. I'm going to wiggle a little bit away so I don't lose all this length, and I'm going to lower my arms back down to 0. And before I let them touch the floor, I make sure my belly is long, my throat is still open, and I'm going to let my wings fold out to the sides and my palms touch lightly to my side ribs. It's nice and worth it to take a couple of breaths and scan through, feeling where you notice the fatigue, where you notice just a tiniest bit more feedback in your body. And for me, it's like right at T8, 9, and 10, the middle of my right side rib cage, the middle lower ribs. And so I just fill into that area, and I'm going to get feedback. I'm listening to my body. I'm experiencing the two sides, right and left, front and back, lower, upper. And I'm just really tapping into what I feel. Now I'm going to take my hands and I'm going to go back to deep groins, just letting the lumbar. I kind of lost some of that curve a little bit, but that's because I was lengthening so much. The lumbar can kind of extend a little more. I'm going to go back to deep groins, and I'm going to start the whole process all over again. Push the pubis down, move the back ribs away, start in 0. You can open and close seed hands, and this is where you start to get sensitive to the uniformity. From palms up into the hollow of the elbow to the deepest underarm that you can create. You work the fingertips, the palms of the hands, and the central dome of your palm to feel that tone up through the sleeve and into the back ribs. Pinky ring middle, and then index the least. Slide into seed hands with the palms still spacious inside the fingers. Fill up the breath. Turn to 5. Keep the hollows in the arms. Keep pushing the ribs wide on all sides and reach from the back heart. Take the arms over to 10. Still attentive and sensitive to when the trapezius start to overwork. The minute that happens, fill and puff the ribs. Find that broadening inside, and then start to bend at the elbows, drawing them narrow in, crossing more space or filling in more space across the upper back. And then as you open your domes, keep the thumb and pinky mound squeezing so the arms stay toned and active. Fill up the breath, find more space for your shoulders so that you can still be free in the neck as all 10 fingers touch the earth. Fill up and make space where you feel a little fatigued. Even do a little inchworm, opening and expanding your wings from behind a little bit more, and then take a few breaths here. It's really worth it to hold space and time here to feel your neck completely free. Your ribs expanding wide and your shoulders fully broadening out to the sides. Pushing, expanding into those dull places, and then reach the arms back up. Nice and slow, being fully aware of what the ribs are doing, what the belly is doing, and you can bring your arms all the way down to the sides again. Making sure the belly and throat stay open. Let the elbows fold out to the sides as you push the hands just gently to the ribs again. And let your body feel and integrate. There's a lot of energy around the heart. When we begin to open, as we become comfortable pushing out on all sides into the side ribs, we are going to feel things. That is a huge part of our Bowspring practice, right? Is that we are able and more confident feeling. It's not an easy thing in our culture. Honestly, I mean, it's so much easier to numb out, and there are thousands of things that we can purchase in order to do that. Our culture has made it fully accessible to find access to anything, right, that can distract you from doing this work. You probably just sit and watch this video and find reason to not actually do the work. But that's really why we're here, is not to talk about it at all, not to have an opinion of it from the outside looking in, but to step in and have our own direct, visceral experience with greatness, with integrity. Now that practice, V vector, low to high, chin up bar, those 3 movements done on the back plane, then maybe practicing vertical, those are going to give you some serious good workouts for the upper body, the arms, the whole chest and rib cage, and you can feel the beautiful experience along the neck. Now, we're going to work on one more thing before we close today, because that is a lot that you can just work on that transition, keeping the shoulders out of the equation and really building sensitivity to the backside, right and left. As you feel the heart radiant expansion on all sides, you become so much more sensitive to how the curves lay into the bone differently, really, on each side of the spine. And you might even start to feel if there's a little torque, a little rotation in the pelvic bowl, in one sitting bone, in one side rib, even in the shoulders being a little imbalanced, as far as sometimes they expand faster on one side, and we want to feel sensitivity to balance on all sides. So we're going to do one more thing, because as I said before, a really strong ecstasy arm can lead you to a really healthy side bend, right? And you want to do it mindfully from time to time, slow and with full curiosity, so that when you go into classes where you're more sequenced and you're more flowing through poses, which feels really good and delightful, but when you go into those faster classes, a little bit faster, you don't want to go and fall into pattern. It's so easy to normalize, especially towards the beginning of class, one of those trouble areas, right? The minute it starts to work for you, for that next hour, it's probably going to be working for you, right? So that's why, and I always tell people at the first 10, 15 minutes of class, really be sensitive to your patterns. And that's when you want to start to create balance, so that as you build more heat, you're bringing with you new good habits, okay? So we're going to try a side bend. We're going to go through that same action of arms, but one at a time, right? So I'm actually going to do a side bend to the right, but I'm going to keep my right hand in dome here. And the reason for that is I want to sustain maximum space along my right side. In fact, we'll do that first. We'll do both arms, and then I'll show you what I normally do. Okay. So as I'm sitting, I'm really wanting to work a strong hero foot. So if you're familiar with this, you want to feel that there's space, right? The front of your ankle is lifting off the floor just a little bit. And what happens, you just have a little more buoyancy to rise the ribs, but you actually get more grounded as you allow the pelvic floor to open. So I'm going to go to the same sequence. Turn the thumbs in. push the ribs, and always finding that broadening into the back ribs so that the side can expand first, right? And then I'm going to push forward to the heart, from the heart to the hands rather, and rise up, not rotating because I don't want to lock out the elbow, rotating the upper arm, but keeping that little lower arm, or the lower arm turned in just a little bit. Now as I rise the ribs, that's going to keep it out of the shoulders. If you feel the traps working and pulling up like this, my theory on that is that your shoulder blades are moving faster than your rib cage and your belly are lengthening up, right? So that means these are independent, the shoulders, of the whole torso. And in Bowspring, we feel a continuity, a conjunction of the effort from core to periphery and right back to the core. So when you lift the belly and ribs, neck, shoulders, traps, completely relaxed. And that's what you want to learn to normalize instead of an overwork and a martyred part of the body. 0, back ribs full. And you can see I'm opening and closing my seated hands just to feel that uniformity up the arm. But I push the heart to the hands, fill up, stretch the belly up to 10. And I'm rotating, pushing, just keeping an eye, being aware. Where's my neck? Where's my shoulders? Broadening my underarms. And then I'm going to sweep in those elbows. Really take the elbows in, but the hands can stay even a little wider than my trapezius muscles. Now I'm going to take the domes back, keeping my jaw relaxed and dome press into my ecstasy arm position. Now just that action, what it can look like often is this, right? If we go straight to ecstasy arms, all that beautiful broadening and space that we need to keep the breath channel, that central core clear, disappears. So it's really worth it to practice. All right, so once we've come forward through V vector, draw the elbows in, really to focus on the upper ribs and the chest, shoulder girdle broadening, and then keeping your throat open. Try not to accommodate head down to get hands to ecstasy. Lean back. Fill the back heart, pushing the elbows from the side low ribs, or from the middle low ribs rather. Take your domes pretty wide to the sides of your skull. And the thumbs just hooking right at the occipital ridge. Give a little more lift up. Push the tongue even gently into the upper palate. Feel your neck get longer. Now from here, this is where a good side bend starts. Find the breath. Keep the elbows narrow, the head resisting back. Go up and up and up before you go to the side. Now why I bring my dome hand here? The tendency is that we collapse that bottom side heart, ribs, side waist. So when I arc over, I use that same arm like a stilt. And in Denver, Desi calls it like a pole vault. You want to go up and over that arm. In many different planes, we use that languaging to pole vault over the arm that we're drawing in from, right? The dome of the hand, or the right hand, and when you're bearing weight in like a twisted cat. So doming gives me like a strut, and then I make my belly lift and lengthen. The way to do that is to bow, hips and head move back, always on a full heart. And then I feel right away the difference in my right and left sides of the neck, and I wiggle up out of my pelvic floor to find more uniform space along central channel. Then I rise up and over. What's the default here? It's so easy to just let the head go, to let the stretch be consolidated in your neck. But a uniform sensation comes from low hip to armpit all the way to earlobe. Can you feel that deep uniform tone as you go into your side bend? Not the easiest practice, but when you do, give time and space to toning into your bow first, where the front body lengthens and opens and the back body tones and engages into the bone. And with that really strong bow, it holds you in integrity along your central channel. Then you can move your central channel through space. And I'm feeling all the while sensitive adjustments. My right ribs have a tendency to flare faster. So I round into the low dark heart, then root the hips and press the head back, and I can bow a little more open. And I'm really arcing from low underneath my side ribs, pushing my wing up and out and letting the head go back and over the right arm. Honestly, there's nothing like a long, slow, delicious side bend when you really give yourself time for it. And with a healthy ecstasy arm, so you can go faster, sure, all day long, but wow, if you take your time, transition through healthy range of motion, where in the transition from point A to B, you're holding integrity of uniform tone, and then you broaden, you hold space on the inside. When you keep yourself held to a new level of integrity, you would be amazed how far you can go, how far you can climb, how far you can fly. So when you arc, find the rootedness in the hips, the bowing of the front body, so that you can stretch from hip to armpit to earlobe and feel a uniform sensation. Take your time to explore your own greatness. Allow your wonderful radiance to slowly rise to the surface by holding space for yourself. The way we hold space is at the core of the body. Everything on the surface is in service to that radiant center. Take your time with your arms, with your wings. They're connected to the heart. And we want them to stay palpably touched, drawn in, and fueled from our capacity to push back out and reach to the world. So I hope you try this. I would love to hear feedback that you experience as you go slow through these ranges of motion from a low V to an upper high V vector with that sleeve of your arm support, with a chin up bar position, staying broad through the ribs and shoulders, and then letting the back heart lift and tone uniform from sacrum up to the back of your skull, feeling the sensation balanced on both sides. Then you can move it through space. It seems like an easy action, and we do it all the time in the Bowspring alignment method. That's why it's so important to do it mindfully. And even just starting on your back, give that a try, and you'll feel some serious heat building up pretty quickly. I would love to hear some feedback. Let me know what your experience is and what else you have questions on, because there's always more videos to come. Love you much. Talk to you soon. Namaste.